Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nico with the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, I'm for you guys Week 13 waiver wire ads for fantasy football in 2020. We are approaching the fantasy football playoffs. In a lot of leagues, next week the playoff begins. In other leagues, it will be the week after in Week 15. So make sure that if you guys do end up enjoying this and you are new, to please hit that subscribe button down below. I'm going to help you guys win that 2020 Fantasy Football Championship so we can all eat some W's like our name was famous Jameis Winston. As well as before we get into this, I'd like to ask that if you guys could please listen to a quick word from my friends and my sponsor over at OverlayDFS.com. OverlayDFS.com is my favorite way to play daily fantasy sports on the interwebs. They do have two options on their website, the progressive tournaments as well as the matchup shop. But my favorite place to make that young moolah, like my name was Lil Wayne, is on the matchup shop. It's pretty simple. Who scores more fantasy points? Some examples from Monday Night Football. Miles Sanders, -9 fantasy points, or Boston Scott, +9 fantasy points. DK Metcalf -0.5 a point, or Tyler Lockett +0.5 of a point. It is so simple. You can put up as much money as you want, and it is so easy to win. Anyone could do it. You guys do research all week long to win your fantasy football matchup, so why not win some extra cash on top of it on OverlayDFS.com. Again, make sure you guys check it out, OverlayDFS.com. And we are back. Let's get into it. Week 13 waiver wire ads. We begin with the running back position, then we're going to do wide receivers, then tight ends. And if there's any players that I don't talk about in this video that you guys would like to know my opinion about, please let me know down below in the comments. I try to answer as many comments as possible. We began with Latavius Murray, running back of the New Orleans Saints, at the Atlanta Falcons this week, and what a juicy matchup that will be. Now, Alvin Kamara seems like he has been completely and utterly butt-fucked by Taysom Hill in this scenario in New Orleans. It just seems like when Taysom Hill is the quarterback, Alvin Kamara is not going to be seeing anywhere near the amount of dump-offs he was seeing with Drew Brees or could have been seeing with Jameis Winston, and it just seems like he's going to keep getting vultured by either Latavius Murray or Taysom Hill, so it doesn't even seem that great to be starting Alvin Kamara at this point in the season, which is terrible because he's a guy that is one of the better running backs in the NFL and for fantasy football. But this opens a humongous spot for Latavius Murray. Week 12, Latavius touched the ball 19 times for 124 rushing yards and 2 rushing tutties, 1 reception on 1 target, 2 receiving yards, 1 fumble, 25.6 PPR points, and 25.1 half PPR points. Now, I'm not going to throw him into my roster, assuming he's going to drop 25 points again, but I think 10 plus PPR points is something that you can almost assume at this point in the season if he continues to get the amount of touches he has been getting with Taysom Hill under center, especially up against such a soft serve ice cream defense in the Atlanta Falcons. To me, he's just the no-brainer #1 waiver wire ad at the running back position. Next guy, here we got Cam Akers, running back of the Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals this week. Now, it appears that Cam Akers will now actually get the touches that this man fucking deserved. They drafted him highly in the draft, not a first-round pick or something, but they did go up and get him early on in the draft to make sure that they had another running back for this team, and it seemed like Cam Akers was just pushed to the side early on in the season, right? It seemed like, hey, you know, we got Darrell Henderson, we got Malcolm Brown, and they were giving Cam Akers a little bit of touches. Then Akers gets hurt. And then Akers returned recently, and now he's been getting the touches that we wanted him to get. Now, he's not a super safe guy to just throw into your roster on a weekly basis, obviously, because he's only going to get like 9 to 12 or 13 carries. But up against the Arizona Cardinals defense in Arizona, I think he can make that work. Against San Francisco last week, which is not the worst defense in the NFL, but obviously not the best anymore after all the injuries that occurred there in San Francisco. 9 rushes for 84 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 14.4 PPR points, and 14.4 half PPR points. It appears now that when they're near the goal line, they actually want to use Cam Akers a lot more than they did in the past. Back a couple of weeks ago, you'd see Malcolm Brown just hammer it in from like the 2-yard line, or Darrell Henderson. Now it seems like Cam Akers may have stolen that job. Now, it's obviously risky business dealing with a backfield that is so triple-headed when you have Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown, and Cam Akers. But with how kind of dry the waiver wire is at this point in the season, Cam Akers is definitely worthy of an ad. Next guy here, we got, just kidding, J.K. Dobbins, running back of the Baltimore Ravens, going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, he should be allowed to play tomorrow on Wednesday. Does he? Does he not? I don't know. I really don't know. Do they even play on Wednesday tomorrow? Who really knows? They will be back into the 3-headed backfield, kind of like the scenario with the LA Rams running backs. So he's definitely worth a stash, but I wouldn't try to thrust this guy directly into my roster. But if I had to pick one out of the 3 running backs of Ingram, Edwards, and Dobbins on a weekly basis, Dobbins is the guy that I heavily lean every single week. Week 11 versus the Tennessee Titans, the last time he played. Obviously, he should be playing tomorrow. But again, we don't know if that game's even going to happen because the NFL will move anything for the Baltimore Ravens, it appears, at this point. The Denver Broncos had to suit up with a fucking wide receiver as their quarterback. But the Ravens, they can get as much time as they need. 15 rushes against Tennessee, 70 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 15 receiving yards, 18.5 PPR points, and 17.5 PPR points in that matchup. Now, the Tennessee Titans defense is no greatest defense on fucking turf, but the Dallas Cowboys aren't either. The Dallas Cowboys defense fucking sucks, and J.K. Dobbins could get extremely loose in this matchup. Foot loose, let everything hang loose. Next guy, here's Benny Snell, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Washington football team. Now, James Conner is on the Corona protocol, so Snell should be able to step up big in this scenario up against the Washington football team. Now, obviously, tomorrow, we will have a better idea on if Anthony McFarland is going to be the guy or if it's going to be Benny Snell. In my opinion, I think Benny Snell is going to be the guy on the team, and I feel like James Conner is going to be missing next week against the Washington football team, which puts Benny Snell in an excellent spot. Now, you have to make sure you check when the waivers are going to be going through in your league, so make sure you set them tonight just in case, because they may not move on Wednesday night like you would assume they would. Since they pushed the game to Wednesday, every single fantasy football website is different. ESPN, Sleeper, NFL, all of them, their waiver wire rules are different, obviously pertaining to this topic. So let's hope that your website obviously helps you out. I think NFL is moving theirs till Wednesday night or Thursday, early morning Thursday, to make the waiver wire go through, because that would only make sense since the fucking games are being played on Wednesday. There's no reason for the waivers to clear tonight on Tuesday night. Next game here, or next player here is Ito Smith, running back of the Atlanta Falcons versus the New Orleans Saints. Now, last week I was all on the Brian Hill train, and while Brian Hill didn't completely shit the bed, he didn't do enough for me at all. Brian Hill did outsnap Ito Smith, but Ito Smith heavily dominated in the point total for fantasy football this week, going up against the New Orleans Saints. Last week, up against the Las Vegas Raiders, Ito Smith ate them alive. 12 rushes, 65 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 4 receptions on 5 targets, 10 receiving yards, 17.5 PPR points, and 15.5 half PPR points. Now, I mean, he fucked the Raiders so hard, he might have contracted gonorrhea, because when you go to Vegas, you know, it's a bit dangerous over there with the STDs and stuff, so make sure you guys stay safe, obviously. I don't actually know if that's true. That is just my assumption. Just like my assumption that Ito Smith is going to go to absolute pound town up against the New Orleans Saints. But, again, he's going to be splitting with Brian Hill. Does that make it so that Smith scores more points this time? Or maybe it's a 360 fucking straight up reverse off the top of rust, and Brian Hill is now the guy next week. So it's definitely a tentative ad, but it seems like Todd Gurley's going to end up missing again this week, which will put a nice spot on Ito Smith, definitely if you're in a deeper kind of a league. Next guy, here's Devonta Booker, running back of the Las Vegas Raiders at the New York Football Jets. Now, Devonta Booker is in a decently good spot here because Jacobs is banged up and could miss. Now, we didn't see we didn't see Booker do really anything last week up against the Atlanta Falcons, but that's because this Las Vegas Raiders offense was running at snail's fucking pace. They got bent over by the Atlanta Falcons, forehand, backhand, slapped, all of that jazz, all shamataz. It was absolutely brutal. 5 rushes for Booker, 6 rushing yards, 1 reception on 4 targets, -1 receiving yards, 1.5 PPR points, and 1/2 PPR point. But I expect this to look a lot better up against the New York Football Jets, especially if Josh Jacobs is banged up and misses. If he does end up missing, Devonta Booker could honestly look like the best fucking ad of the week due to how atrocious the New York Football Jets defense is. Now, onto the wide receiver section of the video. So if you guys have ended up enjoying this far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. We begin with Deebo Samuel, wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers, going up against the Buffalo Bills this week. So I wasn't too sure if I could trust Deebo Samuel, honestly, after coming back from the injury, but boy, was I wrong. 11 receptions, 13 targets, 133 receiving yards, 24.3 PPR points, and 18.8 half PPR points for Mr. Deebo. So now at this point in the season, I kind of feel comfortable starting Deebo Samuel. The Buffalo Bills matchup isn't amazing, but if the 49ers offense still continues to look good, it just seems like you have to play Deebo Samuel, even though the pieces around him just are not all that great, considering it seems like he's going to just get force-fed in this offense. Next guy here, we got Michael Pittman, wide receiver of the Indianapolis Colts, at the Houston Texans this week. And the Houston Texans, man, oh man, Will Fuller suspended. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later with another player, but that is a humongous big hit to the Houston Texans. Michael Pittman, after 2 absolute heaters of a week, just fucking dies in a ditch week 12 up against the Tennessee Titans. But he did have 2 games prior to that over 15 PPR points. And in this matchup, he did have 9 targets in which they just got their shit fucked in by the Tennessee Titans. I do expect big bounce back, though, out of Pittman after a 4.8 PPR point performance last week against the Titans, as well as 3.8 half PPR points. I just don't feel like this is the Pittman we are going to see for the future, especially up against such a bum-ass defense in the Houston Texans. Next guy here, Houston Texans wide receiver, Keke, do you love me? Coutee, Houston Texans receiver going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Will Fuller, suspended. Kenny Stills, released. Keke Coutee, if you guys remember from 2 years ago, I believe the 2019 fantasy football season, was the talk of the century. If you guys watched my channel back then, which a lot of you guys probably didn't because I only had like fucking 5 subscribers, talking about Keke Coutee, but he was a very talked up commodity of this Houston's offense due to how well he played in the 2018 fantasy football season down the stretch, and then he kind of did nothing in 2019. Hasn't done anything really this year. Had 3 targets, 2 receptions against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, 17 receiving yards, 5.7 PPR points, and 4.7 half PPR points. But now the wide receiver 2 spot is completely decimated on the team. The wide receiver 1 spot has now been stolen by Brandon Cooks because Will Fuller has been suspended for those PEDs, just like his name was Julian Edelman. So I think that Keke Coutee now does elevate himself into a pretty solid spot here in an offense that is going to be decently high scoring in every single matchup. Now, the issue is obviously, will he actually become the wide receiver 2 on the team? There's definitely other guys around him that could elevate their status, but based upon what I've seen of the rest of these bum-ass wide receivers around him and the fact that they released Kenny Stills, unless they somehow get Kenny Stills back, Keke Coutee seems like a perfecto magnifique ad for this week and for the future. Next guy here, we got Cole Beasley, CB, Chalupa Batman, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills at the San Francisco 49ers last week up against the Los Angeles Chargers. He had a down game after absolutely taking a dump the week before on whatever defense that was because he scored like 27 PPR points. Up against the Chargers, only 4 targets, 2 receptions, 25 receiving yards, 9.3 PPR points, and 8.3 half PPR points. But even in a down game, this guy does not disappoint. He doesn't leave you dissatisfied because when you play him, he's good for like 8 PPR points, but he has the upside of about 15 to 18 PPR points on a weekly basis. Obviously, last week, Gabriel Davis just kind of cucked him because he threw a touchdown to whoever. I don't even remember who he threw a touchdown to, or maybe someone threw a touchdown to him. It was some type of trick play that screwed Josh Allen out of some fantasy football points, but that's okay because Cole Beasley will be back in the saddle to be the, in my opinion, second best option in this Buffalo Bills offense. I like him here up against the San Francisco 49ers this week in San Francisco, but it's not really San Francisco because I think they have to play in Arizona or something stupid now because the NFL is a bunch of nitwits, and so is the Santa Clara, wherever they fuck they play, is so stupid as well. No one's gotten corona on the San Francisco 49ers during a game, and there's no fans there, so why can't they play there? I genuinely do not understand. Maybe some Santa Clara official can explain to me why there's a hole in your fucking head and the San Francisco 49ers are not allowed to play in their home stadium. I'm not a 49ers fan. I like the Miami Dolphins, but to me, it's a pants on the head move, to be honest with you. It's so dumb. Allen Lazard, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, is my next guy versus the Philadelphia Eagles this week. Now, Allen Lazard didn't really have all that good of a day at all. 4 receptions, 6 targets, 23 receiving yards, but he redeemed it with a tuggy. He did end up getting hurt in that game, but he came back, scored that tuggy, got that tuggy like his name was Robert Kraft. We're talking about penis tugs as well as football touchdowns, and he's probably the wide receiver 2 on this team at this point. So I would say he's a safe wide receiver 3 option, but the upside that I thought he would have seems to be limited in this offense, especially if they're just going to feed Davante Adams how they've been feeding him. Up against the Eagles, though, is a soft serve cupcake matchup. We saw Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson play very well against them last night, so I think Lazard is definitely worthy of an ad, but nothing super special for Lazard like I kind of assumed he would be. Corey Davis is the next wide receiver here of the Tennessee Titans going up against the Cleveland Browns this week. Davis has had those hot games. He's had those cold games, but in reality, he's more of just a mediocre kind of a wide receiver. Not a guy that you fucking center your fantasy football team around, but not a guy that doesn't deserve a flex spot every once in a while. Week 12 up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis, went 3 for 3 like a fucking free throw, 70 receptions, or 70 receiving yards, I should say, 10 PPR points and 8.5 half PPR points. This week he gets the Cleveland Browns, which could be a decently high-scoring game between these two teams, especially with how broke back the Tennessee Titans defense is like the goddamn mountain. So I think that we could see Corey Davis have another pretty solid game here this week up against the Browns. Now onto the tight end section of the video. So again, if you guys have ended up enjoying, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Logan Thomas, tight end of the Washington football team, has been in and out, up and he's down, but overall he's been pretty solid, especially with Alex Smith at quarterback. This week he gets the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Do the Pittsburgh Steelers even play the game this week on Wednesday? I really don't know at this point, to be honest with you. I'm recording this. You guys are seeing this like 30 minutes after I recorded this. I genuinely have no idea if that game is even going to happen. Week 12 at the Dallas Cowboys, which is obviously an easier defense. 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's. 20 receiving yards, 1 tutty, 1 rush for 3 rushing yards, 13.4 PPR points, and 11.4 half PPR points on Thanksgiving. He had a nice Thanksgiving feast that day. I like him here up against the Pittsburgh Steelers as well, due to the fact that the tight ends right now that you can add on the waiver wire are diminished, and it's just not looking too hot on the waiver wire for tight ends. Next guy here, Robert Tonyan, tight end of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Tonyan was really, really good to start the season. Not to start the season, but like a couple weeks in, this guy was on fucking fire, NBA Jam style, and then he fell off the face of the earth, and then he started getting hot again as of recently. Sorry if you guys can hear my fucking squeaky ass chair. 2 weeks in a row of over 15 PPR points, right? Playing real well against Chicago. 5 for 5, 67 receiving yards, 1 receiving tutty, 17.7 PPR points, and 15.2 half PPR points. So I like Tonyan a decent amount this week up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, a juicy matchup like his name was Juicy J. So I think Robert Tonyan should be able to play well in this matchup and continue his streak of over 15 PPR points. So thank you guys all so much for watching this video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win that 2020 Fantasy Football Championship. Make sure you guys check out overlaydfs.com as well. Link down below in the description. I love you all. Have a great rest of your guys' day. As always, good boy.